Welcome to From the Deep. I am Mike the Finder.
And I am Book of Brett. Have some fun, damn it!
And today we're going to be talking about the 2021 film Nightmare Alley from director Guillermo del Toro.
I swear we're not even drinking. That's the bad part.
You can already kind of tell what a kind of an episode this is going to be. You know, a few days ago, you and I were trying to figure out what movie we should be doing, and it's your turn to pick. So do you want to explain to us why? Because when we were talking, it kind of took a long time to pick one. And I think that's just because we want to do a lot of horror, but we also don't want to do exclusively horror. And we want to be watching
for both
stuff,
them and us.
Yes, exactly. And we want to be watching stuff that's both interesting to you and to us, right? So, why Nightmare Alley?
Because I saw two things. One is an adjective, and the other one is a proper noun. I saw Guillermo del Toro, and then I saw neo-noir, and I went, yes.
Yeah,
yes.
I can definitely agree on that. This is a very hyper-stylized neo-noir type movie.
Yeah, and I also saw some of the cast in this, and I mean, the cast in this is just ridiculous. It's ridiculous how many people, like well-known people, are in this movie.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. And they're kind of all over the place, too. They don't, all of them don't necessarily have big roles. Willem Dafoe is a good example. He's tucked in this movie for virtually no reason, almost.
Basically the first, well, not for, wouldn't say for no reason, but I mean, it's only the first act. He's only in there for the first act.
Yeah, true. So as always, let's hop over to IMDb here. Nightmare Alley is from 2021. It's rated R. It's 2.5 hours long.
It's a lengthy
2.5 hours long.
It's a lengthy one.
From director Guillermo del Toro. This is starring Bradley Cooper, Cate Blanchett. Let's just start with overall thoughts on this movie, because I think you and I are going to have very differing opinions about this.
That's the vibe I've been getting so far after we talked a little bit while setting up. Yes. I really liked it. It's definitely neo-noir. I love period films, especially films set in like the early 1900s. Especially like the 20s to the 40s. I always really like movies like that. I really, really enjoy neo-noir films. Miller's Crossing is a really good neo-noir film. If anybody ever wants to go see that, it's the Coen brothers. It's one of their earlier movies, and it's amazing. But I liked that there was so much going on in this movie, and there is a lot going on in this movie, simply because it's so long, and it is long. I will say that it is long.
Boy, is it ever.
But there is a point where, like, you even called me, and I went, "Oh my God, I have half an hour left," and that was because not only because it was like, "Oh my God, I have a half hour left," like as in what else is going to happen, but also because I didn't feel. I was never bored watching this. I was interested in what was going on. The characters were interesting to me. I like that it goes from like so many different settings. Like you've got the carnival setting, which gives it a certain vibe, and then it goes to New York, and I feel like there's this good transition between the vibe of those two, because they do make it kind of like grungy and dirty for the carnival part of this movie, and then when they go to what I'm gonna assume is New York,
they don't ever specify. I don't think.
No, they don't. So I thought there was a nice transition there, because once we get to New York, or the big city that they're in, the lighting changes, the vibe changes, and then we go to a lot of other different places throughout this. So I was really interested in the cast of characters that was in this movie, and I know you had an issue with it being really long, but that didn't bother me so much, simply because I feel like they made that time useful.
Okay. Well, my overall thoughts on this movie are this. Way too long, yet still somehow you don't go deep enough into anything. Everything is surface level. We're at the carnival for an hour, and short of him killing an old man to learn his tricks and meeting Molly, not much else happens. And I, to be perfectly honest, was kind of on board for this up until he started doing what they refer to as the spook show. That was when he flipped over from being a kind of unlikable guy to someone that I am not enjoying as a protagonist. And every single person in this movie, short of Molly, is unlikable. And it's just, it's so long that they have to still somehow, I guarantee you a director's cut could be 3.5 hours of this movie, because they somehow jump around so much. Molly falls for him so quickly. He gets the old man to trust him with all of his secrets so quickly. Everything just quickly happens, yet somehow it's 2.5 hours long and still drags out constantly. And I love the technical aspects of this movie. The colors are great. Like you said, when we go to New York 2 years later, there's more contrast, there's more color. It's just shot differently. I love that. And whenever the carnies come into the hotel in their new world or whatever, they seem almost dingy within this like more contrasty place. It's very interesting. Technically, this is a very well-made movie. I had the biggest problem with the protagonist being a really, really unlikable guy. And
I think he's supposed to be, though.
I understand that, but there's no reason for me to be rooting for him or give a shit what happens to him. That is what it did for me. Because he was so unlikable, I just didn't care what happened to him. And when I lose interest in what's happening to him, and I still have 50 minutes to go, it feels, it didn't work for me because of those things. Now, the acting is phenomenal. The camera work is great. The color work is great. The script is okay. There's some stuff.
It's very noir. It's very noir.
But that's
the way it flows
that is why
noir.
It has as much charm as it does, because you set it in this, you give it this hyper stylized noir look, and you set it in the 40s. You can get away with a lot there because it feels like a different place. So you can get away with a lot more of it there. But for me, it's just too long. Every character is unlikable other than the girlfriend, and I just stopped caring what happened to him about halfway through. Not only because of its length, but because the main protagonist doesn't have enough good in him for me to give a shit. So,
well, you kind of get the idea from the very beginning, though, that he's not a good person,
100%,
and that he's not supposed to be likable. I found it interesting to. I care what happened to him in the sense of like, what is his comeuppance going to be? And so when I see these movies like this, where you do have an extremely unlikable person or protagonist, and I think that's a big thing in not with the protagonist so much, but noir in general is usually filled with a lot of very unlikable characters. It's supposed to be dark. It's supposed to be showing the underbelly of society, the underbelly of human nature, and you get that in a lot of noir films, both classic and neo-noir.
That's true.
Yeah. And so when I was watching him, I knew from the very beginning, like, this is a dirtbag. This is a bad person, because we don't know what's happening at the beginning with him dragging the body. All we know is that he has killed someone and he is covering his tracks, and now he's trying to get away from that. I think if you go into this with the mentality of like a classic noir type of film, it's really easy, because this is what I did. I assumed there was going to be a crime aspect to this movie, and there is, but not in like a noir crime, like mobster type crime.
Yeah.
And so for me, I really liked Del Toro's take on the noir genre. And one of the things I liked most about this being a Del Toro movie is that he always seems to do something different. And I think that's the thing I like the most about Del Toro is he always seems to be trying to stretch the envelope or stretch his comfort zone, or maybe this is his comfort zone and he just wants to do that. But that's one thing that I liked about this was that it's a Del Toro movie. The colors feel like a Del Toro movie. The camera work feels like a Del Toro movie. The carnival is classic Del Toro.
Yeah.
Just with the oddities and with the characters and just the way the whole thing feels. But even as we go, even as we transfer to New York, which is a totally different setting, it still somehow feels like Del Toro is behind the scenes pulling the strings. And that's one thing that I really did like about it. But going back to what you were talking about him being super unlikable, I do completely agree. He is super unlikable. However, I think Bradley Cooper did an amazing job, and I'm not normally like a huge Bradley Cooper fan.
I'm not either.
But I really liked him, and I liked him as an unlovable, unlikable jackass because I feel like at the beginning there's still that semblance of, up until he gives the wood alcohol to Pete, which I didn't realize actually was on purpose until you said something. Let me rephrase that. I didn't think it was on purpose, and the reason I still not sure if it's on purpose is because he leaves money for it.
Well, she also says it at the end, at the very last therapist session. She says it. Like, the old man you killed in the carnival. She says it.
Right, but that doesn't mean it was murder. He still killed him, but it doesn't mean it was murder.
But the other thing is when he grabs the alcohol, the camera is only focused on the one box that is poison.
Right. Okay.
And he knows that. Otherwise, they wouldn't have had the setup with Willem Dafoe giving us that information earlier. Because
I took that... Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, because that they set that up, and then when he takes it, you only see the box that is poison. I thought it was kind of like, duh, he did that on purpose.
Okay. So, I took it more as in, like, Willem Dafoe told him, and so now we have a reason for what happens to Pete to happen. And also, I took it more as, like, they do only show that box, but I took it as more as them showing the audience, like, this is what's about to happen. And not so much him doing it on purpose. Again, the thing that made me think it wasn't on purpose was because he pays money for it. And it's like, why would you leave money for it? I mean, that's like that's like leaving a trail right there to show that somebody did this and it happened, at that time. So, I mean,
well, in theory, Pete could have done that himself. I mean, there's no way to trace him to that specific coin or anything.
Yeah, they didn't exactly have the DNA forensic evidence.
Yeah.
Evidence.
I don't know. I think it's just this dude going around killing people, tricking people into giving him their money for a mentalist trick. And the whole thing at the beginning where the old man is like, I forget what he calls it. Is it side-eyed or something? Regardless, whatever he calls it, I can't remember. But when he says that, I thought there was going to be this. They have the perfect setup for this to be sort of a redemption thing, where he goes down this road and he realizes what he's been doing, and he loses Molly, and then he turns everything around. But instead, they turn it into an episode of The Twilight Zone, and while that's charming, it doesn't fit the tone of this movie at all. And I couldn't get into it because of all that. I think
that's fair.
I don't understand why he knows what's happening at the very, very end when they want to put him in a cage and feed him live chickens. He knows that that's the thing. And I guess he feels like this is sort of what I get for being such a crappy person. But I don't know. I just didn't care about it. And the big payoff at the end where you find out what he did to his dad and that he really is truly a horrible person, by that time, it just wasn't shocking to me. And I didn't care because of all these other horrible things he's been doing. It just didn't. I don't know, man. I just didn't like this.
That's fine. I mean, and you're giving an opinion piece, so I'm not gonna. I can't sit here and be like, no, that's not right. Like, you know, if you were like, it was in this aspect ratio, I could sit there and go, no, you're wrong. It was a different aspect ratio. Or like, if you know, like, oh, they used this. Like, if it was something technical, but that's kind of the whole. That's kind of the whole point of film. Again, this is the reason why I like noir films, though, is because it very often is about the darkness in human nature, and that's why the aesthetic of noir films is there.
That's all fine, but there's also a reason we've moved past that. If I can feel for Dexter, I can feel for somebody that's not a good person.
Right.
That's not what it is. It's not that he's a bad person. It's the way that everything is set up that makes me not care. I understand Dexter as a character and what he has gone through and the things that he's done. And I know nothing about this dude other than the small little thing that they've told me. And then at the end, the big payoff is that he kills his dad. And I don't know anything about him at all. And so so when I see him do nothing but terrible things, yes, you're right. Noir is often about the darker side of people and all of that stuff. I totally get all that, but you do have to think of it in a way of like, why am I telling this story? And I could not answer that question. Why this story is being told, I don't know. I don't know what it is. What am I supposed to have gotten out of this after watching 2.5 hours worth of it?
Well, like with your Dexter reference, and don't get me wrong, I understand what you're saying, but with Dexter, you've got a lot more time to develop characters. And you've got a lot more time to pull back the layers of the onion.
That's true.
Whereas with something like this, and it could be a consequence of it being so ambitious, but with something like this, you've only got a finite amount of time to really learn about the characters. And I think we learn enough about, and this is just my opinion, but I think we learn enough about Stanton that it at least gives us enough reference for his character to see that character kind of be consistent throughout the whole thing, to the extent that it's his downfall. Like that, and that's one of the things I liked about his character, was that he's consistent all the way. You can take it as, you know, he's not learning any lessons, but I think that's part of why I want to see his comeuppance. That's why I'm not rooting for him because I want to see what happens to him in a good way. I'm almost rooting against him because he is so unlikable, but he's surrounded by people that are also bad, which I think makes a contrast of really how terrible he really is. And so, but I do see what you're saying as far as, you know, if you don't care about the character as far as what's going to happen to them, then you're not interested in it. And I can understand that. But I was interested in what was going to happen to him because I liked him so little.
I mean, okay, I personally can get that because I like horror. There's a lot of characters like that where you want to root against them because they're so terrible, but there's also people like Jason or Freddy that you're like, hey, you do terrible, awful things, but it sure is fun to watch you.
Like, go get him. Well, and this is a thing. This is a thing more with neo noir than I feel like classic noir. As far as like everybody being kind of terrible. Like with older noir films, you still had your hero or your anti-hero, 90 times a detective, but you still had them, and they were still trying to do some good. And I feel like noir films are much more somber. Usually your protagonist is still not a likable person. They're not as bad as the people around them usually, but they're still not good people. Whereas with classic noir, you have a protagonist with a moral compass. And I think that's what's interesting about this kind of noir film is everybody's so terrible. It's like with crime movies, like it's why people love The Godfather. Like you can romanticize these horrible monster mafia members, but you still end up being interested in them. It's the same thing with this, where we do have these like terrible people, this terrible protagonist who's just screwing over Molly, and but I still want to see what happens because something's got to give. At a certain point, it's just like this buildup of calamities, and it's like, okay, how long before it just gives, and how does it give?
Dude, I was literally screaming when the guy hands him an envelope full of money toward the end, just so he can perform a seance, basically. I'm screaming at my TV, just say no. Why did you say yes to this? There is not enough. You have been warned over and over again that this guy is dangerous and that you will not end up living through this situation if you fuck him over. And he does it anyway. And it's like, I just don't get it, man.
Well, that's why he's bathed in green so much throughout this movie. He's just greedy ass SOB.
The filmmaking language, as we always say, is fantastic in this movie. It is a film masterclass as far as that goes, for sure.
It really is.
It's a gorgeous movie. The lighting is amazing. They play with colors so well in this film that all works perfectly. And because it's hyper stylized neo-noir, all of it kind of pieces together to be such a beautiful, beautiful movie. It really is.
The ending scene where Molly is wearing red, like, that got me. That really got me, because to me it symbolizes two things. Obviously love, which is pretty standard with red in movies, but it also, to me, symbolizes bloodshed, because he's going after her because he's in love with her, and he thinks he's using her, but there's still his twisted version of love there. But it's also foreshadowing the downfall of getting her to be involved in the situation.
Right.
And when I saw that, I was like, dude, that was a good use of a very kind of stereotypical use of red. But it was just, like you said, this movie is an absolute masterclass in on-screen film language, for sure.
For sure. I mean, I think the script has some issues, and it's way too long, and all the things I've already said. Regardless of how I feel about it, just because I don't like it doesn't mean that I can't appreciate it in that way.
Right.
Because, dude, it's I was watching it and I was just like, when you compare this to some of his older work that's super fantastical and really stylized, but in a much more muted sort of a way almost, I feel like he really found the perfect place for his style to poke through in this movie. It's just beautiful. Yeah. It's just great.
Yeah, I would agree for sure. I would also say this is a really good way of him using his style to reach a broader audience.
100%. Yeah, I completely agree.
Because like Pan's Labyrinth, like, even though it's an amazing film, it's not going to appeal to everybody because it is so rooted in fantasy. Whereas this is a little bit more mainstream. It is just jam-packed with stars. I mean, jam-packed with stars. This is, I think it's going to get an award nomination. Because it
Probably.
is so...
It definitely does feel like one of those movies.
It's going to get a nomination. For better or worse, I feel like this is going to get a nomination because, unfortunately, when you jam-pack a movie full of stars like this, you're more likely to get nominated for something. And I'm not saying that's a good thing. I'm just saying that's the way that it is. And so I really think this is, like I said, a really good way of him... I think drama in general is a really good way of him getting his style into a more mainstream audience. Now, with that said, I don't think that should be the end goal, nor does Guillermo del Toro have anything to prove at this point either. So, and that's the other thing, is I don't think this was him trying to reach a broader audience. I think that just is going to be kind of a byproduct of the movie.
Yeah, the one thing I will say is that it's interesting the way that he does weave in his monsters and all of the stuff that you usually see from him. It is in here, but it's not overtly about that stuff. So especially one of the cool things is the practical effect of the knuckles whenever he's washing his knuckles off and he pulls
in the glass
and he pulls it out of his knuckle. There's little things like that where you can tell where he has come from and what kind of movies he's made in the past. But it's I think you're right. This is aimed at a much broader audience, and I think because of that, it might win an award because it does seem like one of those movies that the Academy would be all up their butts about. And to be honest, I think it would probably deserve it. But
I will say, up until when, well, honestly, for the majority of the carnival scene, I was expecting this to go in his like kind of standard fantasy direction.
I was actually kind of more on board when I thought that than it was the further it got into it.
With the geek and with the and with the book and all of that stuff, like I really thought this was going to go more of a fantasy direction, which to me would have ruined the neo-noir aspect of it, for better or worse. I'm not saying that that's necessarily a good or bad thing. It would have just ruined the neo-noir aspect to it. But again, like I said, I like noir films, and so I do like the way this played out. As you said, it is a little bit long.
Well, this is also based on a novel. So whenever you're basing a movie off of a novel, that kind of makes me understand why stuff is jumping around as much as it is, because they feel like, oh, we got to get this and this and this from this all in here to make sense. And what you end up kind of doing is just jumping a lot with no real, I have no idea how long they were at that carnival. No idea. But within the time that he arrives and they leave, he falls in love, kills an old man, steals all of his secrets, and I have no idea how long that took. From his wife. Yes, I have no idea how long all that took. And because there's no timetable, the 2 years later thing means like, okay, so is he drawing from these experiences over being there 2.5 weeks, which is highly unbelievable, even when he does have the book, and you know what I mean. And it's small stuff like that. They just jump around a lot. So but those are my biggest issues. I'm gonna stop complaining about them because those are really the only things I have to complain about with this movie. Everything else is so beautifully done that it's hard to hate on. And right. That's why I'm kind of frustrated, because it's like I want to like it, but that's what I was going to say. It sounds like you really wanted to like this movie. Yeah, and by the end, I just found myself kind of annoyed at how unlikable he was. There was no character development in it for him at all. He never learned anything. And I just was left questioning why I had watched this and what I was supposed to have gotten out of it. And I don't ask myself that very often. And when I do, I start to question like the story of the whole thing. Because if I didn't grab onto the story while it was happening, there's no reason for me to have watched it, beautiful filmmaking or not. Like, I can watch it to appreciate beautiful filmmaking, but as we said in the last episode, story is king all the time. You can have the most beautifully well-made movie ever, but if it's this long, boring story about a character I not only dislike but don't care what happens to, what is the point in that? So
I can understand that. I think I'm gonna go watch more Bradley Cooper movies.
Interesting.
I really liked him in this. And my biggest experience with Bradley Cooper is the Hangover movies, and so to see that to this, and I know he's been in other stuff, but
you've seen him as Rocket Raccoon, right? He's Rocket Raccoon
from Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's him.
That's not the same though. It's not the same at all. But no, he's in some like military movie, which I don't really normally get into military movies, which is probably why I haven't seen him. But yeah, I really liked him in this.
He is really good at it. Yeah.
Kate Blanchett is an imposing person.
Yeah, she is.
Like she is imposing.
Yeah, she has a really strong presence whenever she's on screen, especially with that really strong like hairdo that she has and her bright red lips. It makes me want in that office too. It like really she comes off kind of weak in the restaurant, but then you see her in the office and it's all kind of shot from like waist level almost to make her look more powerful.
Watching her in this actually makes me want to go back and watch Elizabeth. I don't know if you've ever seen Elizabeth.
I have. I own it. It's great. It's great.
It makes me want to go back and watch her in that again because I remember that's one of those movies that like I watched when I was younger, but not when I could appreciate movies.
Right.
And so I really want to go back and watch her in that. Willem Dafoe in this. I've never seen Willem Dafoe and not liked his performance.
Sorry,
never.
I just wanted to show this off. I have Elizabeth on HD DVD.
Oh my God.
So
what you're saying is you have to go purchase it again is what you're saying.
Yeah, well, that's true.
But no, Willem Dafoe, like I said, I've never seen him I've never seen a movie with him and disliked his performance.
Awesome. He's great in everything.
Yes. He does. Have you seen that Vincent Van Gogh movie he did?
No, I actually haven't. No.
Oh, dude, go watch. We might have to do a review on that because that movie is unbelievable.
Yeah,
it really is.
But he's great in the Florida Project and the Lighthouse and Life Aquatic and everything he's in. He's phenomenal in.
Do you know he's an Aquaman?
Well, that's a bummer.
He is an Aquaman, and somehow still does a great job in Aquaman.
Well, I mean, he was good as the Green Goblin.
Yeah,
he was way over the top with it, but he was great.
Well, yeah, but he's the Green Goblin, so. But no, overall, dude, like I said, I really, really enjoyed this movie. I genuinely enjoyed it. It is long. It is very long. And there is not really a lot to like about anybody except the Carnies and Molly. The Carnies are lovable. Because I mean, you know, they're those, you know, like good-hearted kind of carnies that you don't get to see in movies a lot of times, you know, just regular people working at a carnival. And so
that's true.
And that was one thing that I liked about this is they did not go over the top with the carny cliches. They really made it, they made them rough. They made them gruff. They made them, you know, a little disheveled, like you said, when they're in the hotel room. But that was another thing that I liked is the carnies in this, other than Willem Dafoe, who's just a god-awful human being in this movie. I mean, when listening to him explain how he gets geeks is just...
Yeah, it's pretty terrible.
It's vile.
Yeah.
But again, it says so much about how he portrays the character. So, no, dude, like I said, other than it being really, really long, I actually really enjoyed it. I really did.
So what would you rate Nightmare Alley?
I'm going to exclude time on this because simply because I don't think a movie should be necessarily rated on how long it is. Because, I mean, otherwise we'd be rating like Ben-Hur and Gone with the Wind at like a 5 out of 10 because they're like 4 hours long. But I'd give this like an 8 out of 10.
Okay.
I'd give this like an 8.5 out of 10.
All right. This is a pretty good script. Del Toro directed the crap out of this. The color work is phenomenal.
Yes, he did.
The acting is great. It's a beautiful movie technically. But for me, the pacing issues and the protagonist being he needs some sort of character development. I get that you could argue his character development is him becoming someone who knows nothing about mentalism into being a master of mentalism. Unfortunately, we don't ever get to see him actually learn any of that stuff. We just have to, okay, he has learned all this stuff and he's become this great person. And I feel like the stuff I'm shown is, it jumps around a little bit too much. So the pacing and the unlikable protagonist for me far outweigh anything else. And like you said, yes, we can exclude time from this because all in all, 2.5 hours is not that long of a movie. I don't generally like movies that are this long. There are some masterpieces that are obviously I just do not think that this is one of them. This is a very stylized, beautiful movie, but that's all it kind of is for me. There's some great special effects. There is some great artwork within this movie, but the story is so weak, in my opinion, that it can't be held up to some of the other Del Toro greats. So for me, I am going to rate this a 6 out of 10. It's slightly better than mediocre for me, but I do not think this is anywhere near his best work. And for me, there's not enough substance here, and it's all style. And I can't believe I'm the one saying that, because I am the one that is always all about art house movies and stylized looks and stuff like that. But that's when it's accompanied by a great story that I care about the characters and that I give a shit about what's happening. That's when it works. When it's all style and no substance, it just doesn't work for me. And unfortunately, that is how I feel about Nightmare Alley. So, any final thoughts here?
No. It is streaming currently on HBO Max, and you watched it on Hulu.
I watched it on Hulu, but I also have the HBO Max Hulu package. So I don't know if
that
that's,
might be why.
I don't know if
that's
why.
probably why.
But that may be what it was.
Yeah, they're not going to put it on regular Hulu and the HBO Max package. I don't see that happening.
I suppose you suggest watching this?
I do suggest watching this. I will say, go into it with an open mind. I've been doing that. I've said this multiple times now, but I'm doing this with almost all the movies that we review. I go into almost everything blind now. I don't read reviews. I don't read a synopsis.
I do the same exact thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Everything that we review, we should actually probably point that out more often. We don't watch trailers other than to maybe get a vibe of what it is, and that'll be one of us and not both of us.
On the streaming service that we're watching it
right.
on. And it's usually the one who's picking the movie.
We do not look at any reviews. We don't we really try hard not to take anyone else's opinion in. After we do some of this stuff, I will go look at other reviews and stuff like that just to see how what I'm feeling if that's how other people are feeling. But yeah, I think that's important because I could be completely wrong about this in everyone else's opinion. But if I let someone else get into my head before I said that opinion, then it's not really my opinion. So,
well, and that's the thing I think people should be aware of going into this is, we didn't really give too many spoilers away or anything really, which I'm actually just realizing now that we really didn't give away any spoilers. Except I would say just go into this knowing it is not what you would normally come to expect from Del Toro. For me, I actually kind of liked not knowing that. But at the same time, I feel like maybe my viewing experience wouldn't have been such a roller coaster had I known that. Because there were many times where I was going, okay, now the monster's coming. Okay, now there's a creature. Okay, now he's got power. Nope, never.
Because he has every opportunity to do that, but he refrains from doing so.
Which I can kind to actually.
Me too. He doesn't need to do that. He's made those movies a lot.
Yep. And that's what I said before. Guillermo del Toro he has jack to prove to anybody. Yeah. The dude is a master filmmaker. He is. He is. I love Guillermo del Toro. I really do. Final thoughts is I would recommend this. I think you recommend it to an extent, but not to the extent that I would recommend it.
Yeah, I think this is a film nerd movie. And that's okay. I think that this is going to really appeal to critics and the Academy and all of the important people that it's supposed to appeal to. And really, isn't that just what making movies is about now anyway? Gross worldwide, 33 million. Well, 33.5. Opening weekend, it did 2.8. U.S. and Canada gross is $11 million. So,
what was the budget?
Oh. This has a $60 million budget.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking.
Gross worldwide, it made 30, so it didn't even make half its money back.
Yeah, I was going to say 33 million actually sounded
a little more
low.
than half.
with the amount of work that went into this movie.
Wow.
I mean, props, CGI, actors, camera work. The credits roll forever at the end. 33 million sounded low to me.
That's let's see.
So maybe it won't. Maybe it won't.
Yeah.
Maybe it won't get a nomination.
And now here I'll put it up on the screen so everybody can see it. Why Guillermo del Toro's Nightmare Alley flopped so hard. Again, this is not a brand new movie. It's been out for 2 or 3 months at this point. This says brought in only $3 million on a $60 million budget. That's what this says right here. Here we go. One aspect that attributes to Nightmare Alley's box office failure is simple fact that its competition was Sony and Marvel's Spider-Man No Way Home. The latest addition to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and arguably the most anticipated film by audiences since 2019's Avengers Endgame, leaving smaller films in its trails with a domestic opening weekend of $253 million. The largest opening of the pandemic by far. So it went up against one of the most...
So you're telling me that now, not only are we having these god-awful superhero movies shoved down our throats, now it's ruining the opportunities of people that want to make real movies? That's what you're telling me?
I mean, I guess it depends on what you consider a real movie.
Not that. Not that. Oh my God, dude.
I mean,
oh my God.
Well,
that's depressing.
Well, okay, so this says Del Toro films tend not to have mass appeal with audience, as we touched on earlier.
That's true. That's true.
As other recent films, such as his 2015 gothic horror film Crimson Peak, which is great, by the way, also failed to generate much attention at the box office. Pacific Rim did manage to generate more than $400 million worldwide, but its domestic performance didn't come close to matching the film's substantial budget.
Yeah, and it's because it was a big blockbuster, flashy action movie.
Yeah.
That's what people want now. They want somebody in one of the comments of one of our last videos put it really, really well, that it's like Halloween candy, where you're just being fed it over all the time, over and over and over again.
Can I have some meat? I'd like something of substance.
Well, that was what this commenter was saying. I want to say it was Hugh Reviews, I think was his name. It really well thought out comment, but that was basically his point, was that when you're fed Halloween candy over and over again, suddenly something of substance doesn't taste so good because it doesn't have that sugary sweetness to it. And this is such a prime example of what he was talking about. Is people would rather go and see the newest superhero movie, see the newest special effects, see the newest action sequences, rather than watch something that has some substance. Whether you like the story or not, this movie has substance in one way or another.
100%.
And it infuriates me that that's why it didn't do well, because it was going up against. It wasn't going up against. This movie is in a class of its own when compared to those movies.
Well, yeah, but you got to think, man, that new Spider-Man movie, I read somewhere that is one of the most profitable movies of all time.
Oh, then it must be good.
I'm just saying, like, it doesn't matter what we consider good for, you know.
I know.
And we've said this over and over and over again, and I kind of don't like how much we on Marvel movies, but all of it is it's true. I don't know how else to say. What you just said is true. Other movies of substance don't have as much of a chance because no one is going to go see those when they're, quote, up against Spider-Man or Aquaman or whatever the crappiest man movie is of the time. And it's, you know, unfortunate because I grew up loving Marvel. I loved it.
Yeah, I did too.
And I just could not give two shits about it now.
I'll try not to drag this out because we could spend a whole episode on how
the
environment is changing.
Maybe we should make an entire hour-long podcast about that very thing.
Yeah, I am so down for that. We could talk about that for a while, but it is all I will say is it is extremely disheartening to hear the words Guillermo del Toro's movie didn't do well because it went up against
Spider-Man.
another superhero action movie. It's I just that's depressing.
So if you like this, make sure you hit the like button. If you really liked it, make sure you hit the subscribe button because we got a lot more content, not only like this on this channel, but coming in the future. We tend to be film nerds, as you just heard, and we watch all sorts of different kind of movies. We watch movies like this. We watch crappy old 80s horror. We watch movies like The Tender Bar and Die Hard and all sorts of stuff. So I'm sure...
And just for the record, we did try to watch Avengers for an episode.
That's true. We did, and... yeah. Anyway, if you hate Marvel movies too, hit that subscribe button, and we will see you guys next time on From the Deep. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.